You've dreamed of floating in zero gravity, looking down at Earth from orbit. But here's the question no one asks before booking a rocket seat. If something goes wrong out there, who insures you? We've insured cars, homes, even pets. But what about your seat on a rocket ship? Space is no longer just for astronauts. Ordinary people are signing up for the ultimate adventure. A ticket can cost millions, but if something goes wrong 300 kilometers above Earth, who pays the bill? This is where space tourism insurance steps in. Extraordinary protection for extraordinary risks at the edge of our world. Hello, and welcome back to Insurance World TV, your trusted guide to everything insurance, from everyday protection to the future of risk management. Today, we're taking on a truly out-of-this-world topic: space tourism insurance. As companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic make commercial space travel a reality, one big question arises: how do you insure a journey beyond Earth's atmosphere? In this episode, we'll explore the rise of space tourism, the unique risks of orbit, the specialized insurance policies being written for passengers and spacecraft, the legal and regulatory gaps, and even the ethical questions of insuring humanity's boldest frontier. In the next 20 minutes, step with me beyond Earth's atmosphere, into a world where tourism meets the stars, and insurance may be the only safety net between adventure and disaster. Topic number 1. The rise of space tourism. Welcome to this strange new world of space tourism insurance. We've done safaris, cruise holidays, and bucket list trips to remote islands. But now, the next frontier isn't across the ocean, it's above the atmosphere. So, here's the question: how do you insure a trip that leaves the planet? Welcome to the rise of space tourism. Space tourism is no longer science fiction. Private companies are already flying paying passengers. Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin are running suborbital trips, short journeys that take passengers a few dozen miles above Earth, give them minutes of weightlessness, and then return them safely back. Companies like SpaceX and Axiom Space are going even further, offering orbital missions that circle the planet, and in some cases, visit the International Space Station or future commercial stations. Now, what does this cost? Virgin Galactic has been listing tickets at around $600,000 per seat. Blue Origin once auctioned a seat for a jaw-dropping $28 million and generally negotiates pricing privately. Orbital flights? Those can run into the tens of millions of dollars per passenger. That's the price of a mansion or a trip around the world in just 90 minutes. What is the allure? Why people pay so much? 3 big reasons. Reason number 1: zero gravity. The once-in-a-lifetime sensation of floating weightless. Reason number 2: the view. Seeing Earth as a curved blue marble hanging in the darkness, with no borders. Reason number 3: the bragging rights. Because let's face it, saying I've been to space is the ultimate story to tell. For many, it's not just a vacation. It's an emotional and even spiritual experience, a perspective shift that astronauts often describe as life-changing. Now, here's the big question: Will space vacations ever be as common as cruise ships? Not anytime soon. But the growth is real. Analysts predict the space tourism market could grow from under $1 billion in 2023 to around $10 billion by 2030. That's a massive jump in less than a decade. Looking further out, major banks like Morgan Stanley expect the entire space economy, satellites, tourism, exploration, to grow past $1 trillion by 2040. If reusable rockets, commercial space stations, and training programs scale up, costs will fall and new options may open. Orbital hotels, corporate retreats in space, even lunar flybys. And it's a big but, there are hurdles. Safety records, regulations, and cost reduction will determine how fast space vacations move from ultra-luxury to something more mainstream. Cruises won't be replaced anytime soon, but niche luxury trips and corporate packages? Those are very likely to expand quickly. The insurance angle. And, of course, that brings us to the insurance side. For insurers, space tourism raises some fascinating questions. Who's responsible if an accident happens above the Kármán line, the official boundary of space? How do you price catastrophic risks when we've got so little historical data? The answer? Bespoke insurance. Expect highly customized life, liability, and third-party policies, plus entirely new underwriting specialties as insurers race to keep up with the innovators who are pushing tourism beyond Earth. Topic number 2. Beyond the atmosphere. Why standard insurance won't cut it. Here on Earth, we purchase life, health, and travel insurance to cover the risks we face every day. But once you leave the atmosphere, the whole game changes. Let's break down why standard insurance simply doesn't work for space travel. Reason number 1. The unique risks of space. Space isn't just really high up, it's a completely different environment. And 3 risks stand out the most. Radiation exposure. Once you're outside Earth's protective magnetic shield, you're exposed to cosmic rays and solar storms. That means DNA damage, higher cancer risks, and even effects on your brain and heart. For longer trips, it can even speed up how some of your cells age. Micrometeoroids and orbital debris. Think of tiny pieces of space junk or rock flying at hyperspeeds. Even a particle smaller than a pea can puncture a spacecraft window or damage critical systems. Shielding helps, but it's not foolproof. Re-entry and structural failure. Coming back to Earth is just as risky as leaving it. Heat shields and structures have to work perfectly. History has shown us that one weak spot can turn re-entry into disaster. 2. Why standard insurance doesn't work up there. Here's the thing. Most life, health, or travel insurance policies are written for risks on Earth. They often exclude spaceflight altogether or label it a dangerous activity, which means if something happens in orbit, your claim might not be paid. Spacecraft liability and property coverage? That's a whole different world. It's usually handled by specialist insurers like Lloyd's in London or global reinsurers such as Munich Re. These aren't your everyday policies. They're custom-built based on the vehicle design, the mission, and limited data from previous flights. Bottom line, you can't just tick a box on a travel insurance form and call it a day. 3. The known, the unknown, and the totally unpredictable. Insurers like to talk about risks in 3 buckets. Known knowns, stuff we understand well, launch loads, re-entry heating, or how much debris is floating around a certain orbit. Known unknowns, things we can measure, but don't have full answers for yet, like the long-term effects of radiation on the body, or how microgravity affects blood clotting and immunity. Unknown unknowns, the wild cards. These are risks we haven't even thought of yet, hidden weaknesses in spacecraft, or human factors that only show up once lots of flights are happening. And that's what makes pricing space insurance so tough. There's not enough history to go on, and every new rocket design changes the risk profile. 4. How insurers are adapting. The good news is, specialist insurers are already creating tailored policies. We're talking about launch-to-orbit coverage, liability for the operators, third-party liability, and even personal accident cover for passengers. For now, that means very high premiums and mission-specific policies. But over time, as data improves and more flights happen, we'll see more standardized, modular policies that combine life, liability, and mission cover all in one. To get there, insurers will need better data from spacecraft, clearer international rules on liability, and more medical research on how space really affects the human body. That's why insurers, engineers, and regulators are working hand in hand while flights are still rare. Topic number 3. Crafting coverage, the specialized policies of space insurance. Here's a fun thought. Astronauts have mission control. Insurers have mission clauses. When humans, hardware, or even satellites head to space, ordinary insurance just doesn't cut it. Today, let's break down the custom-made policies that actually protect space travel. 1. The bespoke policies. Space insurance is modular, mission-specific, and way more complex than a travel policy for Paris or Dubai. Here are the big categories. Launch and in-orbit, first party. This covers the spacecraft itself, rockets, satellites, or capsules, against total or partial failure, from pre-launch right through the early mission period. Basically, if the vehicle doesn't make it or fails early, this policy pays. Third-party liability. If debris falls to Earth, damages property, or injures people, liability coverage steps in. Many countries actually require operators to show proof of this before granting launch licenses. Passenger and crew cover. As space tourism grows, insurers are writing tailored accident and life policies for paying passengers and crew. These aren't your typical travel add-ons. They're negotiated case by case, with exclusions, medical screening, and mission-specific clauses. Business interruption or loss of revenue. For companies like satellite operators, losing a satellite isn't just about the hardware, it's about the lost income from services. These policies cover the revenue streams that vanish if a satellite underperforms or fails. 2. Who's underwriting this? This is not the kind of cover you'll find with your everyday travel insurer. Instead, it's handled by specialist teams at Lloyd's of London syndicates, Munich Re, YXA XL, Allianz, and niche brokers like Marsh, Aon, and Beasley. Underwriting here is heavily engineering-driven. Insurers look at spacecraft design, test data, telemetry, and mission profile. They often require deductibles and risk sharing, while reinsurers spread out the catastrophic exposures. In other words, they get very technical before they sign the dotted line. 3. Case studies when it really counted. Space insurance gets tested most during launches or early mission life. Here are two famous examples. Vega launch failures. Several satellites were lost in recent Vega rocket incidents, leading to combined insurance claims worth about 369 million euros, around $411 million. That's one event wiping out hundreds of millions in value. SXM-7 satellite, SiriusXM. After a successful launch, this radio satellite developed anomalies in orbit and was declared a total loss. The insurer payout? Roughly $225 million. These cases prove a pattern. Most big claims cluster either at launch or during the first year of operation, what insurers call the bathtub curve. That's why underwriters price launch risk aggressively and demand rigorous engineering checks. 4. Hypothetical space tourism claim. Let's make it more relatable. Imagine this. A suborbital tourist flight suffers a cabin depressurization on descent. 2 passengers are injured, and the spacecraft is damaged. How does insurance respond? Passenger cover. If the passengers purchased accident or life cover, those policies would pay out. If not, liability could shift to the operator. Operator liability. If regulators or courts find negligence, third-party liability insurance might kick in. Waivers can limit exposure, but not if gross negligence is proven. Hull/spacecraft damage. The operator's hull policy would step in for repairs or replacement, subject to exclusions. Regulatory complexity. Responsibility ultimately depends on where the launch was licensed and what treaties apply. 5. What this means for buyers and advisors. So, what's the takeaway? Space insurance is expensive, bespoke, and data-driven. If you're a passenger, ask for mission-specific insurance. Don't assume you're covered. If you're an operator, be ready for strict due diligence and high premiums until fleets mature. If you're an advisor or broker, learn the language of spacecraft systems, because that's where underwriting conversations really happen. At the end of the day, space insurance is where aerospace engineering meets actuarial science. And yes, the bills can be astronomical. Topic number 4. The regulatory void. Navigating law and liability in orbit. When a tourist trips on a cruise ship, there's a clear law, insurer, and courtroom. But when a rocket malfunctions 200 kilometers above Earth, who answers? 2. Who's liable? International law, the backbone. At the global level, we do have rules, but they're old and written for governments, not space tourists. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty says states are responsible for national space activities, even private companies. That's why governments must authorize and supervise launches. The 1972 Liability Convention makes the launching state absolutely liable for damage on Earth or to aircraft, and liable in space if fault can be proved. So, if debris from your country's rocket hits someone on Earth, your government is on the hook, whether or not you meant it. The Registration Convention requires states to log their space objects. That registry becomes crucial when you need to figure out whose rocket part caused the mess. National rules, the patchwork. But treaties are just principles. The real licensing and enforcement happens nationally, and it varies wildly. In the US, the FAA licenses commercial launches and re-entries. In the UK, the Space Industry Act sets strict liability rules and operator requirements. Other countries, from Luxembourg to Japan, all have their own frameworks. The result? A patchwork system. Operators can shop for the friendliest jurisdiction, and when something goes wrong, that patchwork makes it harder to assign clear responsibility. Establishing fault and liability. Here's where things get messy. First, we identify the launching state. It could be the country that launched, procured the launch, or hosted the site. In joint missions, multiple states may share liability. Next, strict liability versus fault. If damage happens on Earth or to an aircraft, liability is strict. In orbit, you usually have to prove fault. Then comes the question, state versus operator. States handle treaty claims, like Canada versus the USSR in the Cosmos 954 case. But private passengers often have to sue under domestic law, with waivers and liability sharing contracts complicating everything. Finally, the evidence. Proving fault may require telemetry and design data controlled by different states or private companies, slowing down investigations and dragging cases into international politics. Real-world precedent and lessons. Cosmos 954 is still the clearest precedent. A Soviet nuclear-powered satellite scattered debris over Canada in 1978. Ottawa demanded $6 million. They settled for $3 million. Proof that treaty claims work, but slowly and only at the state level. Today, commercial operators mean disputes will mix government diplomacy with private lawsuits, plus years of insurance wrangling. National regulators like the FAA and the UK have moved faster to update their rules, but international treaties are lagging decades behind. The urgent need for international standards. As space tourism scales, the gaps widen. Thousands of tourists, private stations, cross-border crews. It's a recipe for disputes unless we modernize. What's needed? Harmonized global standards for safety, licensing, and mandatory insurance. A common incident reporting and data sharing system so investigations don't stall. Clear passenger rights and balanced waiver rules. And ideally, an international claims facility or fast arbitration process. Quicker than diplomacy, clearer than scattered national courts. Topic number 5. The future of flight. Ensuring the next generation of space explorers. We've seen the legal gaps, but here's the big question. As rockets become cheaper and space travel more routine, how will insurance adapt? Welcome to the future of flight, where insurers must keep pace with reusable rockets, thousands of tourists, and even the ethics of ensuring life beyond Earth. One roadmap. In this segment, how reusable rockets are changing premiums, predictions for space insurance evolution, and the surprising ethical dilemmas of ensuring human journeys into the cosmos. 2. Reusable rockets and frequency of launches. Traditionally, every launch was a one-off gamble, expensive rockets, single-use, and very high risk. That meant sky-high premiums. But reusable rockets like SpaceX's Falcon 9 and Blue Origin's New Shepard are game changers. More launches, more data, fewer catastrophic failures. This gradually reduces perceived risk. Just like aviation insurance matured from biplanes to jumbo jets, space insurance pricing will normalize as technology proves itself. But here's the catch. One high-profile accident with passengers could reset the market overnight. 3. Evolution of space insurance markets. So, where's the market heading? More modular policies. Instead of massive one-size-fits-all coverage, expect smaller, mission-specific policies tailored to payload type, orbit, or passenger profile. Bundled packages. Travel companies may start offering spaceflight packages that include ticket plus insurance in one price, just like today's cruise or airline travel. Expansion of underwriters. Right now, only specialist teams at Lloyd's, Munich Re, Allianz, and others write these policies. But as demand grows, mainstream insurers will enter, increasing capacity and lowering costs. Space insurers as risk partners. Insurers won't just write policies. They'll provide engineering support, mission audits, and safety consulting, just like in aviation. 4. Ethical and philosophical questions. Voiceover. With visuals of astronauts training, families watching launches, concept art of Mars. But here's where it gets interesting, the ethics. Should insurers cover non-essential, high-risk trips like space tourism the same way they cover necessary air travel? If an accident happens, how do we balance passenger waivers with the duty of care? What about crew life insurance? Should insurers treat astronauts like employees, or as adventurers assuming extreme risk? And here's the big one. If humanity settles in orbit or on Mars, do insurers extend coverage beyond Earth? What does a life insurance policy on Mars even look like? These aren't just technical questions, they're moral ones. Insurers aren't only balancing premiums and payouts, they're shaping the ethics of exploration. So, if you're planning to book that dream seat into space, here's the message. Don't assume your regular health or travel policy will follow you past the atmosphere. Always ask the operator about insurance, check for mission-specific coverage, and if you're an advisor in this space, start networking with specialist insurers now. Space tourism is real, and insurance is racing to catch up. Space tourism is coming fast, but the laws and insurance systems meant to protect us are still stuck on Earth. Until we get stronger international agreements, every passenger launch is not just an adventure, it's a legal gamble. So, what do you think? Would you feel safe booking a ticket if there was a clear international claims system in place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Insurance World TV for more deep dives into the future of insurance.